Hi, I'm Michelle Segrest, and welcome to the Factory of the Future podcast. This podcast is inspired by my 3-volume book series on the evolution of modern manufacturing. Each episode features engaging conversations with game-changing experts discussing the processes and innovations that are changing the landscape of modern manufacturing. Thank you so much for listening. Please do me a favor and leave me a 5-star rating on iTunes and take just a couple of seconds to leave a review. And then go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss a single episode. I'm really excited about today's episode. We're going to be talking about the revolution of efficiency with a great guest, Andrea Dallan. Now, Andrea is an engineer, he's an entrepreneur, and he's the CEO of Dallan Spa. This is an Italian family business that has been producing systems for the processing of thin sheet metal since 1978. The company has 160 employees, and this includes engineers, technicians, and operators. He is the author of 2 books, The Revolution of Efficiency and Think Thin. We're going to be talking mostly about the revolution of efficiency today. Andrea has a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering at the University of Padua, and during the more than 20 years that he has spent in sales, he has visited hundreds of companies, analyzing production processes and helping entrepreneurs and managers to make their processes more efficient. I'm very excited to talk with Andrea today, specifically about the revolution of efficiency. These days, making a company efficient means making it more secure, more solid, and more profitable. Being efficient means producing with less resources, and this leads to increasing margins. The resources of interest to an entrepreneur are, for example, raw materials, energy, time, and labor. Andrea's book analyzes the efficiency of processes with 4 distinct ingredients: automation, productivity, flexibility, and sustainability. We'll discuss it in great detail, and I'm looking so forward to it. Now, without any further delay, I am really excited to welcome Andrea to the podcast. Welcome. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for this great introduction.
Wonderful. Well, it's
Yeah.
just a pleasure to have you here. We've had some conversations about this topic, and I know that the listeners are going to enjoy what we have to say.
Great.
So we'll want to jump right in, but I know you have a very interesting story to tell, and I want you to first tell the listeners a little bit more about your professional background and about your experiences in manufacturing.
Okay, Michelle. As you said, so I'm working in my family business, and the company was started by my father back in 1978. And my father used to work in a company that was using roll formers to create window and door frames. During his activity there, he decided that he wanted to go to the university and get a bachelor degree himself. And so he decided to start the company as a small design office for creating tools for roll formers. And then the company steady growth during the 80s and the 90s. And now we are a company of 165 people between engineers, as you said, and operation. So I started to follow my father's example, I think. So
I think that's wonderful. I love these stories about family businesses that go back generations. And it's really interesting because we talk a lot about the manufacturing skills gap that exists out there in the industry. And one of the things I'm learning is that a lot of people who have been brought up with an introduction to manufacturing or raised in a family that experienced manufacturing as a business are more likely to go into manufacturing. And
Yes.
part of the problem with this skills gap is that the people who don't have that background don't know that there's great jobs out there.
That's right. That's right. I started doing many different jobs inside the company, starting from operation, assembly, and so on. And what I can say is that, well, the working in a machine manufacturer company or in this environment has changed a lot during the past years. And right now, so the level of skills that is required is requires us to go furthermore looking for people who has a bachelor degree or technical high schools. It's becoming more and more a profession that requires a lot of skills. So knowing how to use computers and organizing the production. So a much cleaner and much more challenging environment than it used to be
Sure.
in the past.
Oh, sure. I think a lot of people, when they think of manufacturing and they haven't been in a facility either ever or in a long time, they think about manufacturing as just this Rosie the Riveter assembly
Yeah,
line, people just
dark.
assembling
So
parts. But really, there are very exciting jobs out there in manufacturing that have to do
absolutely.
with technology and innovation
In
and
industrial
automation.
automation, absolutely,
Yeah. And
absolutely.
it really is a great path. There are really good jobs out there, and there are a
Fantastic.
lot of them that are available.
That are available, and the companies are actually actively looking for operators that can manage production lines. So very jobs that require talent. But the reason so it has become it is becoming increasingly difficult to find this kind of profiles. So this is also the reason why a lot of companies are looking more into automation, not because so they want to reduce the amount of labor that is involved in their production, but it's because they struggle in finding people to carry on
Right.
the production. But this is also changing the type of skills that we are requiring inside the market.
I want to talk a little bit about why you decided to write this book on sheet metal manufacturing. And I'm also really interested in learning why you chose the title, The Revolution of Efficiency. I think this is a great title, and I'm
Yeah,
curious
okay.
about your
Thank you.
inspiration.
Thank you very much. I can tell you. So I've started writing technical articles on sheet metal manufacturing, how to calculate the cost of one sheet metal product on since 2001 to 2002. And over the years, I collected a number of these technical articles. So I thought it was the time to create a collection of these articles because there was a lot of valuable content in it.
Mhm.
What I think is going to be a valuable content for the readers, which is how to calculate the payback of an investment in a capital equipment, in an automatic line. How do we evaluate the advantages of one machine against other machines? Well, these articles are pretty technical, so that would have been a very technical read. At the same
Right.
time, my children, they have started. Were starting to ask me. So the story of our family business and how I decided to study engineering and so on. And so I was starting to write also this story for them. And I
Mhm.
kind of ended up combining the two things. So writing the revolution of efficiency. So this book, in a way that it is more of a story of telling a story to my children, but then speaking
Oh.
about all the four main subjects of the book, which are efficiency, productivity, flexibility, and automation. But in a way that it is not so tough and that it invites to the reading.
Well, I think the listeners of this podcast are, for the most part, very technically minded. So they
Yeah,
enjoy a article or a story that challenges them and shows them how to calculate things and use all these engineering skills that they have.
they have. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
So technical is good, but I like the idea that you kind of created a story around it as well about the revolution of efficiency.
Efficiency. Yes.
Yeah. So, and just as a sidebar, we were just talking about how children that grow up in manufacturing families go into the family business often. Are your children interested in engineering or manufacturing? Yeah,
Yeah,
kind
well,
of
yes.
an industry type career.
Well, I shouldn't say it because my son, he's 17 and he's just
Ah,
started working as an intern inside our company.
wonderful. Good.
Yes, but he doesn't want that anybody knows that he's my son. So he's working like undercover.
Oh, I
He
love
was,
it. That's great.
so that is promising. So I think he will end up his high school and then he will choose to do. And even my father, he never forced me to join the company in
Right.
any way. But I think, and so our job here in working in automation, industrial automation, and with so much contact with foreign markets, an excellent and beautiful opportunity for someone who wants to enter the career of an engineer.
I think that's fantastic. Yes, you can learn
Yeah.
so much. I mean, my son wants to be a writer, and he is the son of two writers, and so he kind of has that. He
Yeah,
kind of has that thing. To his dad is also a writer, and so I think there's some pressure there. But we're pretty proud that we think he's a much better writer than either one of us. So,
okay.
uh, I think this is wonderful, but I like this idea of your children being interested in what you do and carrying the manufacturing banner for you. Since it is a family business, you want it to live on in your family.
That's right.
So
That's
that's
right.
really
So
cool. Hopefully he'll stay interested, and if something else interests him, I'm sure you'll support him in that as well.
well, I'll
So
tell you the story after he finishes this intern. I'll tell you how
yes,
it's
exactly.
going.
You may send him away from this
Yeah,
profession forever. You never know, or he may love it. So
we,
it
that's
could go
right.
either way.
It's a
Well,
deciding moment for him.
yes. Well, 17 is pretty young,
He's very
and
young. Yeah, he's
it's
very
it's
young.
kind of hard to know what you want to be when you grow up when you're 17. But that's really interesting. I like that. So let's talk some more about the revolution of efficiency. You
Yes.
said that there are four main topics of the book: efficiency, productivity, flexibility, and automation. So can
Yes.
you take us through these four main topics and give us a little bit of a summary in starting with
Yes.
efficiency?
Yeah, absolutely. Michelle, when I started to work in the company, over time I understood that working in sales together with my father was the thing that I liked the most, and where I could get more contact with people, with engineers from other companies, which leads always to very interesting conversations. So working in sales, you have one person in front of you who has a problem about making a new product, or increasing the productivity, or making the same product more efficiently using less raw material. So over time, I have summarized or divided the problems that our customers and in general that engineers are facing during their profession is related to these four main dimensions. Productivity, which means increasing the amount of production per unit of time. So producing the same amount in less time. So then the
Right.
flexibility, so that is the second very important dimension, because the size of the batches is progressively decreasing. So we are moving from one philosophy that was producing for storage to producing for the customer. So the philosophy also, the lean production, lean manufacturing, tells us that production should be pulled from the demand of the final customer. So trying to reduce the intermediate storage as much as possible. So flexibility is the second a very important dimension. And then automation is another dimension of the problems my customers or the engineers I talk with are facing. So how do I produce using increasing the level of automation, so with less labor involved in the production, which leads us to the problem we talked about before earlier, so that the companies are struggling finding operators eventually. So efficiency means especially today when the costs of raw materials are running so high, if we can produce the same product with using less material, producing less scrap, that means reaching the same result using less resources. So less material, less time, less labor, and each time we work in one of these dimensions, we generate a profit for our company. So increasing the efficiency means reaching the same result using less resources. I hope so I could explain it
Yeah,
in
no,
short
no, that was
words.
perfect. Yeah, that
Okay.
was perfect. And it sounds to me like these four main topics: efficiency, productivity, flexibility, and automation. It seems like they all kind of overlap and
That's right.
intertwine with each other. In productivity, you must be efficient, and with automation, you must be
Yes.
flexible.
Yeah. Each time you work in one of these dimensions, you generate normally advantages in all other directions. The person that is in front of us normally has got one problem in mind, but if
Hmm.
we find the right solution, which can be, a machine, but also introducing a new procedure, simplifying a procedure, it generates a lot of benefits to that production line, then to the company, and to the whole organization. This is what I have found in my experience, and this is what I was collecting over time
Right, right.
in this book.
Well, it sounds really fascinating. And kind
Thank
of
you.
getting back to this title, The Revolution of Efficiency. When you say revolution, you think that we're really making great strides, that everything is coming together, and this is the kind of the dawning of a new day of increased efficiency. Is that the message you want to get across to the readers?
Yes,
Okay. Yes.
yes.
Kind of
So
explain a little bit more about that.
well, I was struggling to find a good title for for this. So then I went through different titles. I said the four dimensions of efficiency and so on. But
Yeah.
turns out that also the machines we produce and the lines we produce are lines for thin sheet metals that work out of metal coils. And so the term revolution had a double meaning. Revolution
Right.
because the combination of these four elements can really lead to huge advantages. And for explaining that, I asked some of my customers to an interview with them. So they could present their case study.
Ah.
What were the results that they have introduced in their production, increasing the efficiency, increasing the productivity, and so we are speaking of five, six figures, numbers at the end of the year that really create a revolution the way numbers turn out at the end of the
Mhm.
year. So,
Wonderful. Yes, good. Okay. And
yes,
and of course the idea is always to keep moving forward
that's
and
right. That's
doing a
right.
little bit better this year than you did last year or this month than you did last month. I think there's always this drive to continue to
Yes.
improve,
And
particularly when we talk about efficiency.
yes, and also I liked that the two terms were a little bit at odds. And so the revolution
Right.
evokes a little bit of turmoil, and
Right.
efficiency is connected to a more stable
Right.
environment. So
Right.
I came up with this title. If you confirm to me that it sounds good in English, I'm happy I chose that.
I can confirm that for you. I think there will be a
Thank
lot
you.
of English speaking people who would be interested in reading about the revolution of efficiency. So I think it's a good title, and I'm happy to understand where that inspiration came from.
Thank
Now,
you.
in your book, you also talk a lot about sustainability. And
Yes.
sustainability is something that is on the minds of a lot of manufacturers in recent years and also moving forward. Sustainability doesn't necessarily have to mean no profit, right?
Absolutely, absolutely, Michelle. Especially in these days, so one of the ways that manufacturers have to increase margins is to optimize the use that they make of raw material. We have been working a lot, so in our lines, to create systems to reduce the amount of scrap that is produced during the production. I have brought in some case studies of customers that have saved 20% and more of their raw material. So for making the same production, for example, moving from sheet fed punching systems to coil fed punching systems, that can create huge advantages. In the book, I'm also speaking about the type of technologies that
Sure. Yeah.
we produce in our company. But it has always to do with the process, not to the specific type of machine, Michelle. So we invite to rethink the process from a different type of raw material or to integrate kind of automation that reduces the amount of material that is stored into intermediate storage. So we have cases of companies that are literally saving millions of euros in our case. So we are based in Italy, so I'm talking
Right.
more euros than US dollars, but the same is we find with our American customers as well in the most different areas of application from sheet metal manufacturing. So we have customers that produce grain bins,
Hmm.
chicken hoods, and so on. And they have found huge savings. And each time we save in the raw material, we generate a profit for our company because, of course, we don't have to buy that material. But it is also making the process more sustainable because that material doesn't have to be produced in the first place.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah,
this
I can
is,
understand how
yeah,
sheet metal in particular can be recycled into something else. And
yes,
so to
absolutely.
take those scraps and just not throw them away, to take them and do something with them, saving these raw material scraps can actually earn profit for the company.
Yes, yes,
Because you can
especially today.
create something else. Yeah, especially today. So what
Mhm.
are some of the things that can be made from sheet metal scrap? I'm
Um,
just curious.
no, no, well,
I have an idea, but
no,
okay.
well, the point is that so working from sheet metal coils, so from a continuous strip, you can optimize the material a lot better inside the surface of the material. So
Okay.
normally,
Yeah.
compared to what you would have from producing from sheet, you would have normally the scrap percentage varies from 15 to 25%. We move to coil fed punching and laser cutting, for example, and we
Mhm.
can get to a percentage of scrap that is close to zero. It is producing from coil does not create scrap, whereas other types of production equipment, because they start from a sheet, they will produce a huge amount of scrap at the end of the
Right.
year. So
Yeah, I guess the idea is to always consider that. Consider what is left over after the production process and what you can do with that
yes, yes,
to
yes. And so trying to reduce as much as possible the scrap, reduce
Mhm.
as much as possible the amount of energy that is required in the process, and well, reducing eventually also the amount of labor and the amount of time that we spend for the setup of the lines. These are the four dimensions of savings that end up making the process more sustainable, but most important for an entrepreneur, also a lot more profitable.
Of course. Nobody's doing this just for practice.
No,
The
well,
companies do want to stay in business and keep their employees employed and continue to produce quality products that people need. So it's a business. And
yes,
these are
yes,
all things that people must consider if they're in manufacturing.
yes.
So I want to talk a little bit more about automation because this is something that's on everyone's mind right now. And of course, this podcast is all about the factory of the future. And you can't talk about the factory of the future without talking about automation. What do you think is the current role of automation right now in production processes? And what do you think that role of automation will be in the future?
We can see a different role of automation. For example, after this pandemic with this coronavirus and so on. So here in Italy, we had quite a difficult time in the spring of the 2020 when companies had to close
Right.
for about 6 weeks. We have seen that the companies that could restart the production more quickly were the companies that had the highest level of automation because of several factors. So increasing automation increases also the social distancing. It makes production processes more so safer also in this type of condition, and a lot of companies have started considering automation also because of the pandemic.
That's
But of
right.
course, so the type of automation that is possible today, thanks to the Industry 4.0, is a lot more radical than what could be done 5 or 10 years ago. And when we are speaking of automation, it's not just the automation of the processes with robots and with the automated logistic. It's also in the automation of the management of the information that is
Hmm.
required for the production. So rethinking the processes in terms of higher automation, it does not only involve the machines, it mostly involves the software
Right,
uh,
right.
right
Well,
now.
also, it's a way to communicate in times of, for example, a pandemic. So
Yeah,
when you can't actually physically go to see a customer or you can't physically have a training session in a room and you need to do it remotely through the use of Zoom or Skype
yes,
or whatever you have, automation comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes and
that's
it's a
right.
part of the entire process. And I think you're right that the COVID-19 pandemic has really brought this attention to the forefront of the need
Yes.
for automation. in
It has
manufacturing.
forced a lot of companies to rethink their communication strategies, to invest a lot more in teleservice. We happened to complete the installations of machines completely remotely, so assisting our customers. And we are speaking
Hmm.
of huge lines that were installed in New Zealand, for example, and we are in Italy, so we are on the opposite side of the globe. So
That's right.
these are challenges that would have not been that could not be even thinkable before this period that we all hope we will have
Right,
behind us
right.
very soon.
Yes,
Yes,
hopefully we're getting to the other side of it, and I know
yeah,
that everybody wants that, but we have learned a lot of lessons during this time that we might not have learned otherwise.
that's right.
So it's
I'm sure about that.
it has shone a light on this need that we have for automation.
Yeah,
And I know that also you're talking about your company being a worldwide company, and that's a good segue to another topic I wanted to discuss with you. I know that your company has opened a branch in the United States, and I'm curious to know, tell us a little bit about that first, but then also give us your perspective of the US market and how it compares with the European market.
well, these are two very different, very different markets. Well, we have been working in the States since the 90s. Well, my father has always been very open to visiting new markets. And we have always found in the US a lot of opportunities and a lot of interest for our automated processes. What I can say is that the type of automation is a little different. What we are being asked in the US compared to Europe. In Europe, there is more attention to the flexibility of the processes because a lot of companies are moving strongly into lean production and to smaller batches and flexibility. In the US, there is a lot more request of high-end automation. For example, systems that we call the coil to box. So systems that will start from one coil and provide at the end of the line the product already finished, packed into carton
Right.
boxes at very high speed. So very different type of equipment, but always working in the four dimensions of efficiency that
Right.
we spoke about earlier. So we have decided in 2018 to open this branch in the US, and that has really helped to establish more relationships in the US market, especially because we have the local service, which is essential for our American customers.
Oh, sure, sure. And just so the listeners know, this is in the Midwest in Ohio is where you're based in the
Yes,
US.
absolutely. Thank you.
And
Thank you,
yeah,
Michelle.
so you're right in the heart of American manufacturing right there in the
Yeah,
Midwest. So
yes, yes.
it's a
We
good
chose the
you
right spot.
yes, I think you did. And I have many colleagues and friends that are in that area in manufacturing. So that's a good place to be. I'm really curious, Andrea, if you could look into your crystal ball and see the future of manufacturing. What does it look like to you? What does the factory of the future look like from your perspective?
Well, this is a very good question. So, the factory of the future will be the factory that expresses or embodies the desires of the customers that I hear of every day. It is a place where systems are simple to use, where the level of automation is extremely high, where people can easily learn and be trained in the use of a new machine, and where the role of the people inside the company will also become more evaluated. I don't know how to say it, but
Yeah,
we
yeah.
are
No, I
speaking
see what
of
you're saying. Yeah.
industry 4.0, but I think that even the people will have to become 4.0. So there will be a lot more training for the people, a lot
Hmm.
more opportunities for the people who are curious and want to learn, because the type of innovation that are coming into the manufacturing now, like 3D printing, so additive manufacturing, high automated system, is just the start. And there is really a lot of space and a lot of opportunities if we only want to see them. Of course, if we want to do the same thing day in, day out, well, that will be a difficult spot to stay in.
Right,
So
right.
being open for training, being open to learning, to sharing experiences and so on, which is what I believe was important for me to do at this point with these two books.
That's a very good answer. And you said something really profound that I want to repeat to make sure everybody caught, because it's something that in all these interviews that I've done and all these episodes of the Factory of the Future, I ask this question a lot and nobody said this before. So I want to repeat something you said that I really liked. And that was, you said, we all talk about Industry 4.0 and our facilities have to embrace Industry 4.0, but our people also need to advance to Industry 4.0. And I
Yes,
think
right.
that is very profound. It is a really interesting comment. And I agree with you completely. We have a lot of conversations where, I wonder, are people even, there's so many robotics and so much automation, are people even going to be in manufacturing in the future? And I think you just answered the question that yes, there's always going to be a need for these people.
Yeah.
But they have to get on board and be Industry 4.0 as
Yes.
well.
Absolutely, and the quality of the job will improve dramatically because automation can only take care of those jobs that are repetitive, that can
Mm-hmm.
be hard to do the whole day long. But then we will need people who know how to maintain these machines,
Right.
how to program these machines. So we need to all to step up. So automation is moving forward. We need to move forward together with it. At least
Yes.
that's
I just think
the
that,
way I see
yeah,
it.
I think that's brilliant. And I'm just so glad you said that. So no matter how much automation advances, the people have to advance too. I love that comment. I wanted to go back really quick. We're getting close to the end of our time, but I wanted to revisit something. So we talked about this idea of the family business and
Yeah.
how when younger people are exposed to manufacturing and manufacturing jobs and engineering and all the possibilities that come with that, when they're exposed to it, they're more likely to embrace that and seek jobs in manufacturing.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
I'm kind of curious because you're second generation manufacturing and there's a chance there's a third generation with your 17-year-old. So I'm curious to know, what's the best advice your father ever gave you? And then what advice would you pass on to your son should he indeed enter manufacturing as a career?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is that do what you love. And he
Mm,
said, if you find the job you love, you will never work one single day in your life. This is
I
what
love that.
he told
It's so
me.
true, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's very, very true. And also, even because in each job you have days that are more tough or with,
Hmm.
but if you love what you do, so you will always find out the way to work everything out with a smile, and it will not be hard on you. And this is what I'm exactly telling my son as well.
Right.
So to find something he loves to do, I'm telling him, yes, the family business is a great opportunity, but he shouldn't be forced to feel
Right. Sure.
forced to join it. I saw a great opportunity in joining my father's business, and I hope he sees this opportunity as well. We can say, but and I also believe that companies have to grow, and our company is growing, and we have established a middle management that makes sure that the company doesn't need the members of the family to be in the family business in order
Right.
to continue. Uh,
That's right. That's right.
that's also an important thing. In
Well, we
and
talk about other ways to introduce people to manufacturing, and
Yeah,
Manufacturing Day is a good way when all these companies open their doors, and maybe this year they can do it again. So there's not as much of a COVID threat anymore. They can open their doors and let
yes,
people come in. And when you go into a manufacturing facility and you see how things are made, it is truly fascinating.
yeah.
And
You know what we started to do, Michelle? We started to do virtual presentations of our machines, of our equipment, and we have started to do visits.
Mhm.
Virtual visits for the schools. We have a
Oh, I
couple
love
of good
this.
technical
Yeah.
schools here in Italy. They used to, here in Castelfranco, in our hometown, sorry. And so we used to invite these classes here to see the machines in function and so on. So during this COVID time, we have organized some virtual tours where they could interact with us. I think that even the connection between companies with the local technical schools, not only with the universities, but also with the high schools, is
Mhm.
essential to show our children that so manufacturing is not a dark world. It's really shiny. It's a lot of, there is a
That's
lot of
right.
opportunity, and that it can be also a lot of fun.
That's right. Especially kids that are tech savvy that really love video games and things like this would love things like the robotics and augmented reality and some of these other automations that are coming into manufacturing. They would be perfect. I mean, some of these people get to play video games all day, every day when
Yeah,
they create these augmented reality and virtual reality scenarios in a manufacturing facility. It's really cool and interesting. And
there is a lot more coming up, I think, and I
yes, I think
believe.
so too. I can't wait to see what we have to look forward to in the future. Andrea, this has been so fun. This has been a great conversation, and I
Thank you,
really want
Michelle.
to thank you for being here with us. And your knowledge and expertise is so appreciated. We just really enjoy it, and I want to make sure the listeners know that I have a link to your book in the show notes. Again, the name of the book is The Revolution of Efficiency. And I want to encourage you all to check it out. It really is interesting and fun and a great read, and you'll learn a lot. But for now, before we wrap it up, I do want to give you the last word, just in case there's something you wanted to say that I wasn't smart enough to ask. But is there anything else that you want to say about the revolution of efficiency in manufacturing?
There is just one thing that I wanted to say. So this book has cost me a lot of time, but
Hmm.
I asked my customers to contribute with these interviews and with their
Oh,
case
yes.
studies, and I consider this a gift that they gave to me. So sharing so much of their expertise and of their good practices. I want to transmit this gift to to the
Right.
readers, and I hope that they can find the good values in the reading. I've also listed the book with Kindle Unlimited, so basically it's very easy to get it and to read it. And I will love if you leave me a review after reading it. It's
Yes.
always very much appreciated. And I wanted to thank you also a lot for this opportunity, Michelle. It's been great to be part of your show.
Well, it's been my pleasure. And I know that the listeners are going to appreciate the conversation. So, again, thank you so much. And we really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
This brings us to the end of the show. Thank you so much for listening. Please do me a favor and subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on iTunes. If you have interesting information to share and want to contact me about being a guest on a future episode of this podcast, please send me an email at michelle@navigatecontent.com. You can also send me questions that I will have my expert guests answer for you on a future episode. And in the meantime, please check out my book series on modern manufacturing to read more than 30 real-world case studies about how global companies are using smart technology and innovation to build the factory of the future. All the links to the books and articles mentioned in this podcast are in the show notes. Have a great week, and please join me for the next episode of Factory of the Future.